Time is 6 p.m. We'll now call this regular public meeting of the Board of Trustees of Humboldt Independent School District to order. And moving to our first item of business is closed session. The closed session board will now be held on the matters contained in the notice for this meeting. Should the board determine that any final action, final decision, or final vote be required with regard to any matter considered in such closed session, then such final action, final decision, or final vote will be made upon reconvening of this public meeting in open session. The time is 6 p.m. The time is 7:10, and we're going to do things a little different this evening only because we have to have our budget hearing. So we will now have a public hearing to discuss the 2024-25 budget as required by Texas Education Code 44.004, subsection F. The board may hear public comments, discuss, and may adopt the budget, and the board asks that comments pertain to the budget only and be no longer than 3 minutes. We will address the budget in an action item later in the meeting. So anyone in the public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this topic? And if you do, please come up to the front and you may do so. Okay. Yep. I said they had 3. I think I said that. Did I say that? You had it written there, and I think I read it. Yeah. Okay. All right. But I guess it's moot since nobody's coming up. So, okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Seeing that no one wants to speak on this, I will close the public hearing. I don't need to bang it. Okay. Anyway, now we'll get back to our normal state of doing things. So thank you for joining us tonight. A reminder that the meetings of the board are open to the public, but are not a meeting of the public. Humboldt ISD Board of Trustees meet monthly in a regular meeting to receive reports from staff and take actions from recommendations of the superintendent. The board receives the agenda and all supporting documentation several days in advance of the regular meetings, which allows us to ask and receive answers to many of our questions in advance of the regular meeting. Therefore, lengthy discussions are not always necessary on every agenda item, but as a board, we do have the appropriate knowledge and preparation for responses regarding the content of the meeting tonight. Now remember, there are students and other guests present. To maintain decorum, respectful behavior is expected. Disruptive behavior and/or comments will not be allowed. And with that, our first item, and I'll ask you to stand for the pledges. Mr. Sinton, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor to the Texas
Flag,
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
one state,
under God, one and indivisible.
Now, if you'd please remain standing and join me in a moment of prayer. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, next on our agenda is commendations and recommendations. Dr. Brown, can you please introduce tonight's inspiring moments? And I hope my computer works this time and I can watch it.
Be glad to do that, President Scarfo. So last month's inspiring moment, we met Miss Jasmine Thomas of Autumn Creek Elementary, who will represent Humboldt ISD in the Region 4 Teacher of the Year contest in the Elementary Teachers Division. So tonight, we get to meet the secondary teacher. In tonight's inspiring moment, we will meet Mr. Cameron Bradford of Summer Creek High School, who will represent Humboldt ISD in the Secondary Teachers Division. So let's meet Mr. Bradford.
So I've been DJing since I was probably like about 15 years old. I started by making mix CDs and things like that. Then Summer Creek heard about it and asked if I would DJ for the basketball games, and from there, it's been the doghouse ever since.
You go to a game and it's a party atmosphere. You know, I remember the first basketball game I went to, he was DJing, and I'm standing on the sideline, and you know, he does it during the breaks, and you look up in the stands and you've got, you know, moms and dads and even grandparents up there just standing up dancing during a timeout. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we love to see.
To do it at the school level, to have all of those kids singing, jumping for joy, dancing in the middle of the huddles, it made me feel like I was a part of the coaching staff without being a coach.
Really contributes to the campus culture and campus spirit besides being an excellent teacher in the classroom.
And I've always held education high. I just never held myself high enough to think that I can be a part of that education. I never thought that I was going to be the one to teach somebody, to really help somebody grow and matriculate into adult. I didn't think that that was something I had the ability to do.
He didn't go to school to teach. Like, I went to school, I knew I was going to teach, so I went the regular route. He got his degree, and then he started doing other things, and then he started teaching. So that means he went through the ACP program. And it's just amazing and awesome to see where he started and where he is now. I can't help but be proud. I just don't know anything else to be.
When some of us think of those teachers that made the greatest impact in our lives, it was a teacher who showed they cared about you, really got to know you, both in the classroom and things that you cared about, possibly outside the classroom. He's one of those. So he's one that knows his kids, knows what motivates them, knows what they care about, and then also harnesses that to make sure that he gets through to them in the classroom.
Now seeing my first class here at Summer Creek graduate, seeing them get accepted to colleges, seeing them go to trade school, seeing them ask for help on college essays.
One thing about Harvard and the application process, the essays are easily the most important part, and so he really went deep into the writing process with me while I was in his class, and so he really helped me in that aspect, as well as knowing how to put in just quality work and quality writing together, and so that was something that was huge. And I've had many people look over my essays, him included, and so it was really good to know that he impacted me in that way.
I love Taylor so much. I actually, on my wall in my classroom, Taylor wrote me a letter for teacher appreciation, and that letter basically said how much I helped her and how much I inspired her to actually try harder. For me, that was always my mom. She was always the person that kind of told me, you're doing good, but you can do a whole lot better, and I know your capabilities. For me to be able to do that for somebody that I just met made me feel like I was in the right place. I was doing the right job.
It made me really happy just knowing, I guess I gave back to him in a way that he gave back to me. He made a huge impact on me, and so to be able to make an impact on him and his teacher career as well it's been a really heartfelt experience for me.
All of the things that I know that he's done, it gives me pride when I see other people see the same thing that I see in him. That validates my successful stories of him. So
she's trying to make me cry. She is.
No, I'm not.
It's here. It means everything to me to know that I did right by her and actually became the person that she knew I had the potential to be. She was my 9th grade math teacher. She was my first mentor as a teacher, and she is my current and past co-worker. It brings me a lot of joy to know that I come to a place that I love to be every day, and I'm able to share that same place with the person that I love the most.
Yeah. So I think we have a couple of the stars here. Now wait. We have special people here. Besides Mr. Bradford, who is here with us tonight, your mother? Yeah, Jacqueline Bradford, right, a star of the show, right there, the foundation. Dr. Manning, I think he's in the house. Maybe not, didn't get to make it. All right, well, we appreciate Dr. Manning and his encouraging words for sure. And so a huge thank you to Mr. Bradford and being the Secondary Teacher of the Year. And you are sponsor of GTS Technology Solutions. We want to thank them as well. So good luck to you. And this, I think, Mr. President, concludes our recognitions for tonight. But could it get any better than that?
I don't
think so.
Tough to top that, boy.
I think we need to stop. That's it.
Yeah, let's go home. Okay, we're done. Come back next month. Yeah. Well, okay. All right, next on our agenda is questions and comments by patrons and employees of the district. The board encourages comments from citizens of the district or from district employees. Anyone wishing to speak, either as an individual or as a representative of a group, may do so following the procedure outlined on the agenda. The board asks that comments pertaining to public education issues be no longer than, Ms. Martin, it's 2 minutes tonight, right? 2 minutes. It's okay. And remember that the board may not discuss or act upon any issues that are not posted on our agenda for tonight's meeting. If an issue mentioned is listed on tonight's agenda, the board will defer discussion until the appropriate time during the meeting. And so with that, I will ask, and I'm going to ask 4 of you to come up. We've got some space. Mrs. Mount, thank you very much for keeping that. So if we'll have Ms. Welsh, Ms. Sorry if I say this wrong, Duringer, Mr. Ford, and Mr. Willen.
Good afternoon, school board trustees and interim superintendent Dr. Brown. My name is Keisha Welch. I am a parent of a student who attends Summer Creek High School. He is also a student up under the CTE program's agricultural department. I am here regarding the Humble ISD South Barn located at 1703 Wilson Road that is nicely tucked behind the well-manicured wrought iron gate and nice show arena. Behind that show arena sits 3 barns. All 3 barns have issues that raise safety concerns, not only for our children, but for the animals that they raise for the Humble Livestock Show and Rodeo. Over the past couple of years, I've sent my concerns and addresses to the CTE department, and they went on deaf ears. On June the 4th, we received our first set of show steers. On June the 4th, we also had a heat advisory. At that time, I sent several of the school board members an email out of concern because under no circumstance should our barn be in the condition that it is in. From the electrical problems to the fans not working, our students trying to use blowers and students actually seeing sparks fly from the electrical outlets, to the multiple concerns and issues of the past years for the broken pipes and plumbing. I'm asking you to please, in all respect, all children have the right to learn and learn equally and in a safe environment. The barn that is located in the north side of the district compared to the south side of the district, I'm sorry, it looks a total different view. With that being said, please take the time out to visit the Humble ISD South Barn, located at 1703 Wilson Road. Thank you for your time. Go. Thank you.
It's not on the agenda, but I can ask the administration to provide some information on Dr. Brown. On with, and Mr. Saber, in terms of what's been done just recently to get along that path. So,
Right, so one of the things that we've done, I know there was some concern about the electrical, and I believe, Jason, that is, Mr. Siebert, that's been completed now, so the electrical and new lighting's been installed. We brought in big floor fans that are at each of the stalls for the steer, and we are also ordering fans that are up high. Not all of them are working, most of them are working, but we're going to replace them all with new fans. I think there was some concerns shared about the mowing of some of the area where the steers have to go out, and that's been taken care of and should be taken care of weekly. So it is certainly something that we have our eye on and will continue to address.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Okay, next, did I say it wrong? Ms. Darren, God, sorry. Go ahead.
District and a graduate of Kingwood High School. I am here to add to the Board of Trustees, specifically Mr. Scarfo, Mr. Sitton, and Mr. Holmes, as part of the Building and Planning Committee, to consider naming Kingwood High School's natatorium after the late Coach Lanny Lantroop. Coach Lantroop had many phrases that he used, but his most prominent one was Adui Gabob. It's an acronym that stands for every day in every way we get better and better. Coach Lantroop was a swim coach, but his coaching was more focused on each person, their role in contributing to the team, and the development of character traits that would lead to success. Coach Lantroop was one of those coaches that never raised his voice, he never cursed, and he was never disrespectful. We worked hard because we didn't want to let him or our team down. He created such an atmosphere that if our teammate wasn't giving their all, that person didn't have to have a word said to them by him, because our teammates would remind that person of our team goals and how anything less than excellence was not okay. More than anything, Coach Lantroop wanted us to be good people with integrity and work ethic. He didn't want us to take the easy path ever. If you asked him a question, you would come away scratching your head with a story about a zebra and a penguin, but without a clue what the answer to your question was. He wanted you to figure it out. With his unique coaching style, it is no surprise that his record of 543 wins, 15 losses, and 2 ties, along with his 67 district championships, 16 state championships, and 3 Swimming World National Championships, made him the winningest coach in Texas high school swimming history. He was voted TISCA Coach of the Year 18 times. He was National Coaches Association Coach of the Year, Texas High School Swimming Coach of the 20th Century, and he is a member of the Texas Swimming and Diving Hall of Fame, as well as the National Interscholastic Swimming Coaches Hall of Fame. Coach Lantroop left a mark on the world, specifically in Kingwood, that can never be erased. I cannot think of a better way to thank him and pay tribute to him for what he did for our community and his hundreds of athletes over the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Ford, I know I got that right.
Scott Ford, teacher and parent in the district. Feels like it's been over 6 months since I've been trying to sound the alarm by myself regarding Schoology and Power School that owns Schoology. August 18th, 2023, a proposed class action alleges Power School Holding, that's what we use, and several others have caused millions of students nationwide to hand over their data without the knowledge or consent through the Naviance online platform. The lawsuit alleges Power School has knowingly and intentionally embedded tracking code into the Naviance platform, specifically the student-facing one, without the student's knowledge or parental consent. The purpose is to monitor students' communications, actions, and data transmission. Tracking code facilitates the interception, monitoring, capture, and recording of the entirety of the web user's actions, data transmissions, communications on a website, and filing status. Once code is embedded into the website, the software can then monitor an individual's online behavior. This is called malware. This is called spyware. This is illegal. Every click, swipe, tap, page fill, and fill in real time is crucially transmitted this data to third parties, according to this suit. Folks, I used to work for the CIA. We wish we had this kind of software. Where's our cybersecurity force? August 2023, another article, a Chicago public school student and his parents have sued the school system. I could go on, but let's talk about what they're sharing without our permission. Your kid's full name, your child's photograph, your child's school ID number, your child's graduation date, your child's birthday, your child's email, your child's home address, your child's phone number, your child's grade point average, your child's ethnicity, your child's gender, your child's standardized test scores, your child's citizenship status, your child's parental details. Are you divorced? Are you living with somebody else? Students' potential career interests, strengths, and growth. I'm almost out of time. Being the victim of a violent crime and the most egregious medical diagnosis, being sold to a third party without our consent. I could go on. To me, this is the posting the articles to these news sites on OLIC Parents page.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Appreciate it. Next is Eric Willing.
Here we go. Placing current trustees in new positions at this time is an insult and a slap to the face of every single person in this district. Every single one of you is part of the problem. What about the definition of insanity don't you get? So, let's see. Immediately reinstate Thomas Newman and Megan Morrow to their respective positions as internal counsel for Humble ISD. Cease and desist all involvement with Walsh Gallegos, specifically but not limited to Craig Wood and Ellen Spalding, and demand all records be preserved and retained. Newly reinstated District Counsel Newman and Morrow should then direct complaints to and request investigations from the State Bar of Texas, the Texas Rangers, the TEA, the Attorney General's Office, and the ACLU. Immediately disclose with necessary redactions information covered in closed session this evening. This is unfortunately necessary since none of you can be trusted to do the right thing. Disclose with necessary redactions and without hesitation summaries of all active Title IX investigations and the amount paid to date and legal fees associated with them. The resignations of all current board trustees and Superintendent Fagan should be submitted and accepted forthwith. These are not unreasonable expectations, however unlikely they are to happen. We could be asking that your last act as Humble ISD trustee is turn over board powers and responsibilities to Assistant Superintendent Brown, dismiss yourselves from the meeting, and your district access be terminated. That Assistant Superintendent Brown appoint an acting board of seven volunteer principals, voted on by teachers and staff to complete all outstanding district business until new trustees are elected during a normal election cycle. But we are not asking for those things. We shouldn't have to. This is where your actions have brought us. We will not go quietly into that good night.
Thank you.
We will continue to rage against
Mr. Willing, thank you.
Do the right thing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, next I'm going to ask Mr. Cormier, Ms. Powell, Mr. Stosis, and Mr. Laurie, if they'd come up. They're all here.
It's Ms. Cormier.
Ms. Cormier, sorry. Thank you.
I am a parent of a student who is an FFA who attends Summer Creek High School. Her animal is housed at the South Barn as well. These concerns should not be just getting noticed at this time. These concerns should have been gotten noticed a long time ago. These are problems that should have been solved a long time ago. We shouldn't have to be standing here where we are comparing and contrasting to what and how our kids are learning and how our kids are able to be successful. They all deserve the same tools, the same things across the district. There should be no excuse, no reason, none of that. The fans, thank you for the fans. But guess what? There's a problem today. The floor fans are not working because electrical came today. Yeah. So these are not problems that we should, again, be solving while we have animals housed at the barn. These are problems that should be solved during the off season when there's no one there, when you guys have the time to go out there and see what's really out there, see what our kids see every single day, where our kids are being discouraged because they don't have the same learning conditions as everyone else. So you guys, each and every one of you, go out there and go take a look, because I want you to see what our kids see every single day, where they have to defend like, oh, is that a water moccasin? I don't work for pest control, and I'm not catching snakes. I'm going to be honest. I ain't doing that. I ain't doing it. So you guys need to go out there and go take a look. Barn manager said, oh, I'm not going back there and look at it. I know it's back there. That's a shame. So go take a look.
Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Powell.
Good evening. I wrote you guys a little poem. Oh, gather around, my friends, and listen to this tale of three characters so inept they make us pale. Craig Wood, Hannah Kramer, and Ellen Spalding, the trio with their schemes and plots. They're not our amigos. They hail from different law firms and serve as external counsel. Their actions have cost us. Hopefully, TEA isn't going to pounce us. Over $1 million they've drained from our pot, leaving our district in peril. Oh, what a plot. Legal liabilities they've exposed us to, why they laugh their way to the bank. I wish it wasn't true. Our general counsel, Thomas Newman, they sidelined with glee with a 4-on-1 motion drafted by Spalding, you see. Protect the board, the motion stated. There is no negating that. Mr. Wood, mastermind behind it all, sympathetically obstructing compliance. He stands tall. Fulfilling our legal obligations, not their game. Delaying and obstructing, bringing us shame. Open Meeting Act? They've helped the board violate that too. An open record request? They obstruct that. That's just what they do. Oh, Mr. Wood, Miss Kramer, and Miss Spalding, what a trio you make, leaving our district with a never-ending headache. But fear not, dear friends, for justice will prevail, and these 3 individuals will soon hit the trail. So let us raise a toast to their incompetence, their unethical ways, and their lack of common sense. May they learn their lesson as they count their ill-gotten gains, and may our district rise above, breaking free from these chains. Here's to Craig, Hannah, and Ellen, the stars of the show. May their legacy be a cautionary tale for all to know. Soon, hopefully, we bid these 3 a farewell with a smirk and a grin. Soon our district can heal and once again win. Parents and staff members, put up a good fight. Demand the board reinstates Thomas Newman tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Stussis.
Last board meeting, 4 trustees voted to put the superintendent on leave of absence. And their vote was justified by the abysmal performance of the superintendent. Under her leadership, the school district has declined substantially with relationship to the other school districts in Texas. In 2016, when she showed up, the school district was at the 80th percentile in math and 83rd percentile in reading. In 2023, the district declined to 44th percentile in math and 50th percentile in reading. The school district's metric for CCMR indicated that only 30% of the graduating seniors were ready to move on to the next phase of life, be it college, job, or military. U.S. News and World Report last year ranked school districts across the nation. They rated Houston ISD as better over Humble ISD in terms of preparing students for college. And Houston is so bad, their board of trustees got taken over by the state. Now, trustees Dixon, Sitton, and Holmes, you did not vote to suspend or to put the superintendent on leave of absence. It appears that your vote indicates that you think her performance was acceptable. And based on your vote, I can only conclude that you're part of the problem. For the good of the students of the school district, you ought to resign immediately. Furthermore, when Trustee Grabowski points out the deficiencies and recommends policies to correct the problem, you undermine him. Now, I understand that there's going to be a vote this evening to prohibit trustees from using visual aids during their discussions. It's just a veiled threat, a veiled attempt to undermine Grabowski's reform efforts. And I want to thank Trustee Scarfo that you allowed Trustee Grabowski to use visual aids to describe the decline in test scores. It was very effective.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Mr. Laurie.
Please excuse my voice. I'll do the best I can. Towards the end of the Soviet Union, the 2 leading newspapers were the Pravda, that means truth, and Izvestia, that means the news. The old joke back then was there's no news in the truth, and there's no truth in the news. I bring this up because there's a movement to decrease transparency and public information. Yet again. By now we can all guess on who is driving this car. We as the public have learned real and significant news and truth about our district's professional leadership because some board members were brave and they were not intimidated. During the March board meeting, Trustee Grabowski showed simple graphs. He used public data that clearly exhibited the severe and meteoric academic decline of Humble ISD in the past 7 years. 1/3 of Texas school districts have passed Humble ISD in the last 7 years. With only one historical example, no large ISD has declined so far so fast. These are basic facts that are really explained best in a simple graph. Now, when he showed this, the trustees, they were shocked. Yes, they were shocked because, as they say, their breath was taken away. Now, why were they shocked? It's because one trustee had the temerity to say that the emperor has no clothes. The other trustees were aghast that a counter-narrative than what we are being fed can be publicly and openly discussed. They even tried to wrangle in the attorneys to stop the information from flowing. Our district is scandal-plagued both academically and in our professional leadership. Today there is a motion which will preclude trustees from presenting visuals during the remarks in future board meetings. In other words, after suppressing scandals for 7 years, the board is now seeking to stifle and bury the only avenue left to expose real and significant problems. We demand transparency, we demand a free flow of information, and we demand our elected leadership to
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Odom. Okay, now I'm going to ask Ms. Smith, Dr. Martinez, Ms. Fehrenbacher, and Ms. Green, if they are here, if they would come up. Are there only two of the four I called?
Hello, I have 5 kids and I am a parent in the school district. I'm honestly sick of coming to these meetings. I don't want to be here. I have a lot to do. My kids are really little. I volunteer a lot in the community, and honestly, we don't have time for these shenanigans anymore, and we also don't have time for misinformation like the last 2 gentlemen shared, that it's all just, Mr. Sitton and Mrs. Lemon-Dixon and Mr. Holmes, because if we allow that type of misinformation, then we're allowing the other 4 trustees off the hook for them scapegoating our administration. I don't think our administration is perfect. I think that we have much to improve on there, but you've allowed these other 4 trustees to continuously vote together, and apparently the other 2 that were endorsed by the same group in Kingwood aren't far right enough anymore. I guess they're not trying to decimate public education like the other 4 of you, and that really makes me sad that you are aligning yourselves, Mrs. Parker and Mr. Scarfo, Mr. Grabowski, and Mr. Kirchhoffer. I've spoken up for years. I've never been partisan here because that's not what this is, but this is ridiculous. We have to stop allowing our community to be broken up about this. You guys need to work together. You need to be honest, and I'm not talking about, the transparency of allowing Title IX investigations. I'm saying be honest about your actions, because we don't have a way to take care. We don't have a way to get rid of you guys until an election. Okay, you guys have done things like put people on leave who shouldn't be, that we have to pay for. I don't even want to open records request that, because the cost of open records request right now is so high because we have outside counsel. You've opened us up to ACLU investigations. Plenty of things I could go on and on about, but honestly, you've cost us money, and you've cost our community our trust with each other.
Thank you. Next is, Dr. Martinez isn't here? Okay, all right. Next then is Ms. Fehrenbacher.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Fehrenbacher, a proud grandmother of 2 fine young people who stood here a few weeks ago to speak about their experiences in school. I've watched them grow and be educated here. I've seen how things were mishandled when my grandson was choked with a lanyard by a student, and my granddaughter was told by someone he was going to push her down the stairs. Their education was and still is first in their young lives. They've learned coping skills due to those social blows and are still very successful. I've seen the achievements of so many other students and the parents and siblings who fill this room to watch them be celebrated. It's clear to me that there are amazing teachers and staff who have a high regard for education, which brings me to my objective. I'm a retired teacher of 28 years living in Humble from a school district that went through a scandal and had a takeover by TEA in 2014. The school board and superintendent of Beaumont failed the students and families they were elected to serve. An interim superintendent and a new board were appointed. They faced a challenge of cleaning up a financial mess and repairing the trust of the community. You were elected to serve the best interests of this whole community, not just a few that match your views or beliefs. Because of your tunnel vision, students, families, teachers, and staff are facing a torturous scandal and maybe a TEA takeover. There are always issues and personnel in school districts that require lawyers to review and handle problems. An in-house lawyer, Mr. Thomas Newman, was vetted, interviewed, and voted by you. Shortly after his hire, he was put on paid leave, and other outside lawyers and firms were paid to handle those issues. Now over $1 million are being siphoned away.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Ms. Green, forgive me. Go ahead, please.
I'll try not to take it personal. Okay. I know. Just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you. Every legislation period, Texas politicians in Austin passed education laws that teachers in Texas classrooms are required to follow. Just because a law is passed doesn't mean it is lawful. In 2023, the House passed HB 1605. The bill references 3Qing 4 times, technology 43 times, and OER, open educational resources, 66 times. This law is about technology and not about improving reading through 3Qing. What is open education resources? It actually comes from UNESCO, which is the education arm of the United Nations. Does anyone find this concerning? This is directly from the UNESCO's website. Open educational resources are learning, teaching, and research materials in any format and medium that reside in the public domain or are under copyright that have been released under an open license that permit no-cost access, reuse, repurpose, adaptation, and redistribution by others. OER materials are dynamic, which means it can be changed, rather than static, which means fixed and unchangeable. If everything is free by utilizing OER, why will this law cost taxpayers $2.44 billion? Children between K and 5 do not need to be on a computer. They don't teach them. They have done this, taken the computers away in Carroll ISD and Grapevine Colleyville, and their scores, they're doing better. Additionally, the law references the students are required to have 240 minutes, that's 4 hours of instructional time on the computer. Parents and teachers, are you okay with this? Education is about relationship, and students cannot have a relationship with a computer. I hope you will read HB 1605 and not listen to anyone else, including me, tell you what the bill contains. Use your mind and do not listen to the talking points given by politicians and the media.
Thank you. Now I will ask if they are here, Ms. DeLeon, Mr. McElroy, and Mr. Kirk. Ms. DeLeon, you're first.
Good evening. My name is Gracie DeLeon. I'm a parent of a former and a current Humble ISD student. I'm concerned about the district's academic decline. Today, after not discussing the decline for 7 years, the board is now considering a measure that will ensure information like this remains concealed by preventing board members from presenting graphs during board meetings. I'd like to talk about our Hispanic students' performance. Here are the numbers. In 2016, our Hispanic students greatly outperformed the state's Hispanic students. We were in the 78th and 80th percentile. in reading and math, excellent numbers. However, by 2023, our Hispanic student percentiles had declined to 46th and 53rd percentiles. So where we were once exemplary, we are now average. This downward trend has affected every ethnicity at Humboldt ISD. In 2016, our African American students greatly outperformed African American students in the state in the 79th and 81st percentiles in reading and math. By 2023, our African American students were only slightly above average at the 57th and 59th percentile. This data is available to us all via TEA. Board members, are you troubled by these numbers? Humboldt ISD, aren't we all? If so, I challenge you to do your own research. We may not like what we see, or we may, but at least we have an honest starting point. Quite honestly, I'd rather be wrong than to be right, so do your own research and present it. Doesn't Humboldt ISD teach students how to use graph to explain concepts? Why would the board want to prevent this use of the tool? Why limit the freedom to speak by prohibiting graphs? They are easy to read. Seems a bit odd. Here are those graphs. But apparently we will no longer be allowed to use them. If you don't agree with the data that is presented, bring your own graph and let's talk about it. We need to work together to improve our testing scores. Every child is a blessing, and they rely on us to be unified in their successes. As Henry Ford stated, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is a progress, and working together is a...
Thank you. Next, Mr. McElroy.
Good evening, Humboldt ISD Board of Trustees and Dr. Brown. My name is Kevin McElroy. I'm the father of an incoming sixth grader at one of our middle schools. This district has served our daughters for over 11 years, and we have been pleased with what we've seen. Humboldt ISD has offered a lot of opportunities for these students and for our students to experience. However, we are missing out on one experience that grew exponentially during COVID, and that was the opportunity to experience tennis. Other districts in our area, Katy, Fort Bend, Goose Creek, Klein, Pearland, Alvin, and Clear Creek ISD, along with smaller districts such as Deer Park, LaPorte, and Friendswood, all offer middle school tennis to their students. That experience ranges from a 2-month exposure to a whole year of exposure that they can have in 7th and 8th grade. Our community has been blessed with some highly successful programs within Humboldt ISD. Kingwood High School is consistently ranked in the top 25 in the state in 6A, year in and year out. Kingwood Park and Atascocita have also achieved regional rankings in the area. I honestly believe that we could introduce tennis to many more students at even a younger age if we give them the opportunity to learn this lifetime sport. Sorry, I lost my spot. As soon as the opportunity to gain experience in tennis at our high school courts could be provided by current district personnel, not costing any money to the district. I have shared my thoughts because I've been privileged to know a lot of coaches in this area with my ideas and my plans, and I would love to email them to you. I left you an article that you could read to hopefully pique your interest. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And next, our final speaker for this evening on the list, Mr. Kirk.
Let me get my glasses here. First off, Mr. Scarfo, thank you for everything you do, and you shouldn't be having to go through this, but I love you.
Thank you.
We thought we got rid of first of all, I guess everybody, all of you guys have the cut down version of the findings of the investigation with recording Troy and Miss Fagan. And anyone in their right mind that would have read this, God dog, would have read this, okay, and you don't support getting rid of them, I got a problem with you. Who in their right mind? First off, is everyone in this room aware that Troy Kite didn't show up for work for a year and got paid? Is that incredible? I've never heard, that's unbelievable. I would like to know who in the district doesn't have to come to work, I don't care what your position is, and still get paid. I want to sign up for that job. Okay? We all got up and went to work this morning. So who in the, there's kids in here, so I can't say it. Who does he think he is? And then he's got nerve enough to come back in the last Sunday paper here, and he's suing alleges wrongful termination. He's got some gall, okay? And then, so he's suing here, but it's amazing. He's suing, the lawsuit also includes others, but he's suing Grabowski, Kirchhoffer, Chris Parker. Why isn't he suing the rest of them? You kidding me? Where does this guy get off? And then what happens here, we've got the superintendent in his back corner here, back pocket. They have got, and the thought that we're contemplating bringing her back.
Thank you, sir.
After suspending.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now we're gonna go back to being a little bit out of order of our normal way of doing things, because we normally would have all our action items, but we're going to have one that's of particular interest to me, because it's going to become somebody else's monthly issue with setting agendas. But anyway, we're moving now to our action item A, selection of board officers. And since, Mr. Sitton, since you're in this, I'll read the motion, okay? I move to approve the selection of board trustees, officers for the 2024-25 school year as follows. Chris Parker as president, Ken Kirchhoffer as vice president, Robert Sitton as secretary, and Marcus Holmes as parliamentarian. But I do need a second.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, we have no discussion, so I will now close that, and we will vote on the motion as presented. All those in favor for the motion that was just read by me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? Okay, it passes 6-1. And now, sorry, Mr. Odom, we will take a, 5, 6, 7 minute break. Ms. Martin needs to rearrange some nameplates. So with that, we are going to adjourn. It's 7:58. We're going to adjourn for just a couple minutes. We will be right back.
The time is now 8:08 p.m. We will now reconvene into, oh, just kidding, we're missing a person. Okay, so the time is now 8:08 p.m. We will now reconvene into open session. Item 3H was skipped, and so we will do comments by individual board members, starting with Mr. Holmes.
No comment.
Anybody over here? Mr. Kirchhoffer?
Congratulations, Mrs. President. And I'd like to wish each and every dad in our community, and also the dads on this board, a happy Father's Day this upcoming weekend. The greatest joy in our lives are our children. I hope all our kids are having a fantastic summer. Mr. Scarfo, I want to thank you for guiding this board to the best of your ability under extremely difficult circumstances as our president. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Scarfo?
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Kirchhoff, for your kind words. Appreciate that. And again, I just want to wish all our staff and students and community have a safe and happy summer, and to all of our, especially our campus staff. Please use this time to spend with family and friends and get re-energized, because before you know it, it'll be August. What's the back date? August. It's quick. It'll be here before you know it. So yeah. So please get some rest, have some fun, and be careful, be safe. And I just also want to say congratulations to our Kingwood High School girls. I say young ladies softball varsity softball team for a great run through the playoffs, and especially getting into the semifinals of the state. That was awesome. Congratulations. Go Mustangs. Good job. And I am going to leave it at that. Mrs. Parker, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Scarfo. The chair recognizes Ms. Lamont Dixon.
Thank you. Well, first, I'd like to say congratulations, Madam Chair, and to all of the other elected new positions for officers on the board. Also would like to say happy birthday. We had, like you said, 3 birthdays, Mr. Scarfo, Mr. Kirchhoffer, and Mr. Holmes this month. And I just want to speak to Mr. Bradford, who I know has already gone from Summer Creek High School. I know he's doing phenomenal work, and just honored to kind of see the whole exchange between he and his mother, and also to see Taylor Larkin. I know the Larkin family well, and she is an amazing student in the district, headed off to Harvard. And also, I mean, I know we talked about this at the last, it wasn't the last official board meeting. We talked about graduation, and Mr. Holmes actually started something. He started asking kids like what they were doing next, and I was like, oh, we've got to keep doing this. So we started asking every single kid. So it's very interesting sometimes with me with some of the data that we get back, because every kid was going somewhere. There was a handful that were like, I just don't know yet, but it was military. I have this job. I'm going to all of these great universities. It was pretty amazing. So anyway, just wanted to say kudos to Mr. Bradford and Summer Creek High School, and I know he'll represent us well.
Mr. Sitton?
Thank you, Madam President. So this is the 3rd meeting in a row that I've asked questions ahead of time regarding the agenda with no response, but that's a conversation for another day. I do want to congratulate the Lady Mustangs for their state run. They made it all the way to the semifinals, and also just published the 33 students that were honored by national merit.
Last but not least, the chair recognizes Mr. Grabowski.
Well, Madam President, congratulations. It's kind of cool. Very cool, actually. I wanted to recognize 7 students. My wife and I went to Mr. Cobb's Revit class for computer assistant design, not Revit class, for architecture. And the following 7 students, Elijah Castro, Marky V.C. Holden, Avion Jackson, Andreas Ortiz, Armando Ramirez, Tristan Sullivan, and Riley Theriot, have all been certified in Revit, which is a nationally recognized computer assistant design, and it's for vets with tiny homes. Some of these homes are as little as 300 square feet, and what they produced throughout the course of the year was flat out impressive, what we got to witness. She's not here, but Ms. Geringer, maybe you'll hear this somehow. Great job. She was very, very nervous to read. Quite a resume the coach has. I hope the Building and Planning Committee give it serious thought to name the natatorium appropriately. And Ms. Welch, are you still here? Ms. Welch took the time to give me and my wife a tour of the South Barn last Thursday, and then I met her on Monday at the North Barn, and I'm going to talk about that later. But thank you for dedicating your time to the kids and to what needs to be addressed there at the South Barn. I appreciate you reaching out to all of us up here and giving me the time to come and tour the barns. And then the next two coaches I want to talk about, I think they need to see a psychiatrist right after I announce this, but coaches Maple and McLean from K Park High School back on the 27th of April completed the Ironman Texas. If you don't know what that is, it's a 2.4-mile swim, which I could do maybe 0.1 of, a 112-mile bike ride, and when all that's said and done, you run a full marathon. Let's talk about two guys that can really have endurance. Boy, that's impressive. Again, coaches Maple and McLean out of K Park. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. I want to thank my fellow colleagues for voting, and I want to reiterate that my word of the year is hope. And I hope to get back to business, putting kids first, and truly am hopeful for a wonderful, wonderful year. With that said, item 3I, comments by our administration.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a few things since we met last. A lot of end-of-the-year activities, and I want to thank Ms. Mountain and her team for the recognition of our Teachers of the Year and the reception that was held for them. That's always a great event to celebrate with them. And then the very next day, we followed up with the teacher incentive allotment. 117 teachers, now get this, earned just under $1 million. And if you come in the lobby of the administration building, you'll see the big check that we have displayed there, and they'll actually receive their check on August the 30th. And so I want to thank all of the departments that are involved in that. There's just so many. There's HR, IT, finance, just several that had to work on that to make that happen. And so I want to thank them. And then Ms. Lamont Dixon mentioned graduation, and that's just such a fun event. It can be a long day for us, but it's a fun event. You get energized when you go out there with the students. But I want to thank the high school staffs and the principals, because there's a lot of work to pull that off like they do. And I especially want to recognize someone tonight that has been involved in those high school graduations for many, many years, and I think this may be your last board meeting. Well, now just think about it, Mr. Kramer, before you just jump on that. So I just want to thank Mr. Kramer for all of his work in our district through the years. You've been with us 16 years, and I always say about Mr. Kramer when we're having discussions on any item, his answer is, I got this. And he does that. And so thank you, Mr. Kramer, for not only the graduations that have been pulled off just exceptionally well every year, but for all your work throughout the year. So thank you for that. And then the very last thing, this gets sent out every week, every Friday, and it's the Humboldt ISD news and announcements. So check that out. It'll let you know everything that's offered this summer that you can get involved in, whether that's camps or the summer nutrition program. So a lot of information there. So thank you all for that. And I think that'll do it for me.
All right, moving on to our next agenda item, action items from closed session. Item 5A, personal recommendations. Do I have a motion, Mr. Scarfo?
Mr. Holmes.
Motion to approve the administration's personnel recommendations as presented in closed session with addendum.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Madam President, I don't see the addendum on the agenda.
I got it just a little bit ago. Like, you know, did you share it? Yeah. So he gives it to me the day of, and then I attach it after he shares it, I thought, with y'all during closed session.
Okay.
He did present it to us. He told us about it in closed session, Madam President.
You said there was an addendum, but we didn't see it, so I assumed it was going to be here. That's why I looked at it.
I believe I was the only board member to stay back to actually read the addendum. So I don't know, could we get a look at it right now?
I usually have to change it to a PDF, and I don't have that.
If you could afford it real quick, please.
Where's Mr., do you have the hard copies, Mr. Gardner? Can you just hand them out to us? Be quick. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I read this already. Oh, I'm good with this. Is he gonna come around and collect them? I'm good. I'd already looked at this. I looked at it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item 5B, student expulsion. Do I have a motion, Mr. Holmes?
Motion to approve the administration's recommendation of student expulsions as presented in closed session.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5C, consider in returning General Counsel T. Newman from a leave of absence. Do I have a motion, Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah, I do, Madam President. I move that the board does not return Mr. Thomas Newman from administrative leave through the end of his contract.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Lamont Dixon?
Yes, I know that the motion reads that we do not bring him back, but I believe that we should consider bringing him back. And I believe that the board, we should have a discussion about that in open session. I just, it's interesting to me that we don't have a conversation about that right now in public regarding whether we should bring him back or not. But that's my one comment.
Madam President? Yeah.
The chair recognizes Mr. Scarfo.
Yeah, I'd say it's open for discussion right now. Let's,
The chair recognizes Mr. Sitton.
Yeah, the special board meeting that was called during Christmas break without a polling of the board that put him on leave to begin with was for his own protection. And during the Title IXs, well, the Title IXs are done with the exception, I think, of one. And we voted a polling of the board, not a vote, but a polling of the board 2 months ago to bring this back up because we had talked about in that meeting that when the Title IXs were over, we would have this discussion. So I voted no to put him on leave to begin with, and I will vote no to keep him on leave at this point.
Madam President? I just
Mr.
respond
Scarfo.
by saying that there are still, there's 3 Title IX investigations that are still ongoing.
Mr. Holmes?
I think from back in December when we placed Mr. Newman on leave, again, I've never, ever disputed the rationale behind it. It's just the why, the how. And I'm going to say again, we need to look at bringing him back from his leave of absence for that reason.
Mr. Kirchhoffer?
Thank you, Madam President. Can I ask counsel, can you, the two different law firms that this board asked for, for direction for Thomas Newman, can you state I can't read it. Can you read it just so the public knows? The recommendation, two different law firms, nothing to do with each other. What happened in open session? Those opinions.
So, Mr. Kirchhoffer, thank you for the question. I understand why you're asking it. I have a concern expressing it in open session because what you received from the two different law firms was legal advice, which is intended to be confidential and intended to give you guidance, legal guidance before you act. And further, this is a personnel matter. And under 551074, generally the board likes to make its personnel deliberations in closed session. So it's not that I don't want to answer your question. I think it's a question better asked in closed session, but I understand your desire to give the community transparency.
And it will be made available at some point after everything's over with?
The board holds the privilege, and if that is the will of the board can certainly choose to do that. The lawyers don't like it.
Understood.
When their attorney-client privileged information goes into the
I'm not
public.
asking for it tonight. I'm just asking in the future.
Yes, sir.
So they
I
understand why we vote the way we vote,
I
at least for me.
understand.
Madam President?
Mr. Scarfo?
May I just ask Ms. Spalding or Mr. Rush, can you at least, I'm going to say this the right way, can you, though, acknowledge that the opinions support the action in the motion? Or if you can't, that's okay.
I understand why
I'll
this-
withdraw my question.
I understand why this board wants transparency.
Yeah, okay, that's
I
fine.
really believe that the legal advice should be given in closed
Okay,
session.
and that's fine. And everybody got that legal advice that's sitting at this table, except for Mrs. Martin. And so I'm at a loss as to hearing that people can't make a decision. They can make a decision, yes or no. And the motion's on the table, and
Mrs. Spalding, just to clarify, a motion in the affirmative is to leave Mr. Newman on leave, correct?
That is what I understood from Mr. Scarfo's motion. You may want Mr. Scarfo to read his motion back if there is question.
Please reread your motion.
Sure. I move that the board does not return Mr. Thomas Newman from administrative leave through the end of his contract.
Is there any further comment?
Just one more point. If we
Yes,
bring
Ms.
him
Lamar
back,
Dixon.
thank you, Madam President. If we bring Mr. Newman back, we're talking about 2 weeks, right? There's 2 weeks left, correct? And then we could have another discussion on what happens next. Is that correct? Current contract.
Well, Madam President, I want to be recognized. I don't want to speak.
Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah. We could do that, but that's not the motion on the floor. So the motion there is that the contract, I believe, expires at the end of this month. So the motion is to not return Mr. Newman from administrative leave through the end of his contract. And there was no motion put on the agenda to renew a future contract. So I think if there's no other discussion, we should vote, and we could all vote the way we believe.
Mr. Holmes?
Thank you, Madam President. So what we're essentially, the motion is just to let his contract expire.
The motion is only to continue him to be on paid leave until June 30th.
Right, and I'm sorry, Madam President.
Yes, Ms. Lamont Dixon?
I do understand the language in the motion. I was just clarifying, there are 2 weeks left of leave. That is correct. Okay, thank you.
Any for,
Yes.
Mr.
So,
Holmes?
will those Title IXs be finished within the next 2 weeks?
Ms. Spalding,
I don't know the answer to that question.
I can only
have-
speak on the one that I'm involved in, and I can guarantee you, unfortunately, won't be done in 2 weeks. I'm hoping it'll be done, well, I wish it was done 3 months ago, but okay, it is what it is, so. But no, I know, I can only speak to that one.
Anybody further?
So I just want to make sure, Madam President, so I just want to make sure.
Mr. Holmes,
Yes,
you've been
ma'am.
recognized.
My apologies, Madam President. So I want to make sure we have this right. So they're not going to be done most likely in the next 2 weeks, but his contract ends in 2 weeks, but we put him on leave to protect him while we did these Title IX investigations. Right? Is that correct?
Are you asking?
Yes,
Were you asking me
yes.
if I can answer, Madam President?
Madam President,
Yeah.
point of order. We still have people talking out of turn without being recognized by the chair.
Your point is well received.
I just asked if I could.
Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah. Say that again.
Sure. So I just want to make sure I have this right. His contract ends in 2 weeks.
Right.
The Title IXs that are currently in play, I think you shared that it was 3, Mr. Scarfo. So back in December, when we placed him on administrative leave, the motion was to protect him against himself while we were conducting these Title IX investigations. So we, again, it just seems very odd to me that while these investigations are going on and they're still ongoing, his contract has expired. So we, again, it just seems very odd that it appears, I guess, seeking counsel. Do we need to introduce a motion that we extend his contract while these Title IXs are ongoing? It just seems very odd just how these dates are lining
Mr.
up.
Holmes, his
Yes.
contract extension is not on the agenda.
No, that's why I was asking, do I need to bring a motion forward for that?
There is no.
Can I? Yeah, yep.
On this agenda, there's no legal avenue to bring forth that motion because it is not on the current agenda.
Okay.
Ms. Lamont Dixon?
Thank you, Madam President. A quick question then. So if we vote tonight to not bring him back from leave, but his contract ends in 2 weeks, what happens in that gap of time between the 2-week period, because we don't have another school board meeting until next month? Like, what happens in that gap of time? Or do we have to have a special meeting to address this issue prior to the July board meeting?
So in the 2-week period of time, he would remain on paid administrative leave, and there would be no change in his contract status. If you wanted to make a change, yes, and you wanted to do it before June 30th, there would have to be a special board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? All right. All those in favor of having Mr. Newman remain on leave? Go. Reread the motion.
I move that the board does not return Mr. Thomas Newman from administrative leave through the end of his contract, June 30th, 24.
Do I have a second?
It's been seconded.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-3. Item 5D, consider and take possible action regarding an EEOC/OCR complaint filed by the district's internal general counsel. Mr. Scarfo, do I have a motion?
Yes, I do, Madam President. I move that the board designate and authorize Ken Kirchhoffer and Walsh Gagos to proceed as discussed in closed meeting regarding the handling of the EOC and OCR complaint filed by the district's internal general counsel.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion is moved and seconded. Any discussion? Ms. Lamont Dixon?
Yes, I'd like to amend the motion. It's the exact same motion, but I would like to offer the legal firm that we already have under contract with the district, Thompson and Horton, and for the lead to be Mr. Grabowski.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, as. the-
Mr. Scarfo?
Yes, thank you. As the one making the motion, I will say that it's fine to amend it. I don't agree with it, and we'll vote accordingly.
Ms. Lamont Dixon?
Yes, I made that motion particularly because Mr. Kirchhoffer is already handling, as a lead for the board, all the Title IXs, which is a lot. And I know he can handle this as well, but it's still a lot. This is something different, so I think Mr. Grabowski would lead us well in this effort. And also, the firm that was in Mr. Scarfo's motion is named. Like, so I feel like you should have an outside firm handle the process.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Yeah.
Of this, okay, of the amended motion? Okay.
All those in favor of the amended motion?
I raised my hand when you.
Oh, sorry,
asked.
Mr. Scarfo.
Yeah. And counsel, you tell me what I can't say, but that's not an issue about Walsh Gagos representing this action. From what, we got counsel to that effect.
That's right. You
Okay.
did get
That's all.
legal
I just want
advice
to
on
make
that
that
in
clear.
closed session.
We got counsel to that effect. Okay.
All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Mr. Sitton?
We got counsel by Walsh and Gallegos. I mean, come on.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5E, consider and take possible action regarding TEA complaints filed against the district. Do I have a motion? Mr. Scarfo?
Yes, I have a motion, Madam President. I move that the board designate and authorize Ken Kirchhoffer and Walsh Gagos to proceed as discussed in closed meeting regarding the handling of TEA complaints filed against the district.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion is moved and seconded. Any discussion? Ms. Lamont Dixon?
I'd like to amend the motion. The same motion with Thompson and Horton and Mr. Holmes as a representative for the board. Same reasoning as I gave for the last scenario.
Second.
Any discussion on the amended motion? All those in favor? All those opposed? The amended motion fails 4-3. So let's go back to the original motion. Would you care to reread your original motion, Mr. Scarfo?
Yes, Madam President. I move that the board designate and authorize Ken Kirchhoffer and Walsh Gagos to proceed as discussed in closed meeting regarding the handling of TEA complaints filed against the district.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-3. Moving on to item 6, consent agenda. Motion, item 6A, motion to approve the minutes for the regular board meeting held on Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. Consent. Item 6B, motion to approve the minutes for the special board meeting held on May 21st, 2024. Consent. Item 6C, motion to approve the minutes for the special board meeting held on Thursday, May 30th, 2024. Consent. Item 6D, 2024-2025, construction and construction-related purchases. Consent. Item 6E, approval of goods, professional services, and non-construction services exceeding $50,000 in the aggregate or $25,000 individually for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Consent. Item 6F, approval of professional services and non-construction services exceeding $50,000 in the aggregate or $25,000 individually for fiscal year 2024-2025. Consent. Item 6G, bond transfers and amendments. Consent. Item 6H, budgetary transfers and amendments. Consent. Item 6I, tax refunds. Consent. Item 6J, board authorization of interlocal agreements. Consent. Item 6K, approval of RFP number 2021-005R, general merchandise. Consent. Item 6L, approval of RFP number 2021-006R, educational service consultants. Consent. Item 6M, approval of RFP number 2021-009R, restaurant and catering services. Consent. Approval of item 6N, approval of RFP number 2022-101, miscellaneous instructional materials. Consent. Item 6O, approval of RFP number 2024-14, kitchen uniforms, child nutrition services. Consent. Item 6P, approval of RFP number 2024-10214, software subscriptions, web-based applications. Consent. Item 6Q, approval of RFP number 2024-2024, Combi Ovens installed child nutrition services. Consent. Item 6R, approval of RFP number 2024-2025, large kitchen equipment, child nutrition services. Consent. Item 6S for RFP number 2024-104, books and publications. Consent. Item 6T, approval of RFP number 2025-101, transportation, fleet repairs, maintenance, and services district-wide. Consent. Item 6U, general contractor selection for Mosaic Campus. Consent. Item 6V, general contractor selection for Summerwood additions and renovations. Consent. Item 6W, architect selection for HMS AMS improvement project. Consent. Item 6X, architect selection for WMS improvement project. Consent. Item 6Y, deductive change order. Consent. Item 6Z, low attendance waiver for 2023-2024 school year. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, Madam President, I move to approve consent agenda items 6A through 6Z.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 7A, 2024-2025 budget adoption. Do I have a motion, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, Madam President, motion to approve the 2024-2025 budget and fund balance assignments for the general fund. Budget for the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program Fund and Debt Service Fund as presented, and the resolution for commitments of fund balance.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Mr. Scarfo seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Mrs. Lamont Dixon.
Mr. Beatty, a couple of items came up today during public comment, and I just wanted to see if to consider those, would we have to make adjustments in the budget, or would those departments need to focus on making those adjustments within their departments? One would be the tennis program in middle school. I mean, I think it's always important and it makes us a better district overall. For instance, if you have students learning tennis and playing tennis competitively in middle school, then it only fares us better when they're in high school, because now they've been, working and playing competitively for a longer period of time. So that would be one. Also, the things that were brought up by the Ag Barn, I know that would technically fall under construction. Is there a discussion that we need to have regarding the overall budget adoption to address those?
I don't believe so. I think that hearing those items, we could look at bringing back some options to you all. You can amend the budget in the future at any board meeting. So if we do bring something for the operating budget, we can amend the budget, provide a recommendation to amend the budget then at a later date, and still be able to achieve those things. And we can look at all the available resources to be able to provide those, address those issues. So like you said, construction, we could look at bond money for some of those things as well.
Because also when it comes to the Ag Barn updates that sound like they need to be needed, when I was on building and planning, we really worked a lot on that facility, but it looks like we still have some ways to go. So I don't know who that committee will be going forward, but just wanted to find out if we needed to do anything tonight regarding that before we voted. Thank you.
Mr. Scarfo, you are recognized.
Yeah, thank you. Council, tell me, we're going a little far afield on what we can talk about with, no, we're okay? Okay, that's all, make sure.
The chair recognizes Mr. Holmes.
I'll pass.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Item 7B, 2024-2025 Compensation Plan. Do I have a motion, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, motion to approve the proposed 2024-2025 compensation plan.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Ms. Lamont Dixon?
Yes, the only thing, I think good work was done on the budget regarding the compensation plan. I know this is a tough year financially, but one thing that is always hard for me is when we cannot close the gap for teachers who have been here, I think the number is 15 years till the end is where the largest gap is about. So it's really hard for me to think about it from that perspective. It's a tough year, but I hope we can make it up to those teachers in the future. But I really hate we can't close that gap. But if we find some sofa cushion money down the line, hopefully we can do that, Mr. Gardner.
Mr. Sitton?
Mr. Gardner, there's been a lot of, we've all received some emails, and there's been a lot of chatter out there that some groups didn't feel like they were getting a raise. Can you verify that every STEP employee is getting a raise?
So yes, on the 24-25 teacher pay scale, every employee is getting a raise. Where some of that confusion may exist is that some will match this year's pay scale to next year's pay scale, 0 to 0, 1 to 1, and so forth. And so the process in that is not matching year to year, but it's a staggered approach. And it would be something I would have to show you all again at a future board meeting. But in that approach, which has always been the approach with regards to developing the pay scales, those areas that were brought forward, they are getting a base 1% pay increase, plus what Billy had shown is a 1% one-time stipend. That will be broken up in December and May. And so, in essence, it's a 2%. And in a lot of those cases that were brought forward, they are basically going to be making more than if we stayed on the existing pay scale for 23-24. If that
Thank you.
Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Yeah, and I just wanted to say that in the chart of closing the gap, you don't see the 1% that's coming out of fund balance that I had suggested in our finance committee that we move forward with that, and we did. So that's not visible to that number. So it's a one-time, we're hoping that by the next go-round, the legislature will come through with money and that we can make that an ongoing thing in terms of whether it's a 2 or 3% raise. But we did our best to close that gap, even though you don't see it on that graph. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
That's why I pushed for that we had it.
Close the gap is just comparing base pay to base pay. It doesn't take into account some of these extras or some of these specials that we're doing as well.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Item passes 7-0. Item 7C, Board Operating Procedures, Board Meeting Protocol. Mr. Holmes, do I have a motion?
Yes, Madam President. Motion to approve revisions to Board Operating Procedures, Section Board Meeting Protocol as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Scarfo seconds. Any discussion? Mr. Grabowski?
Yeah, I would love to say that you heard from numerous speakers tonight that are in favor of trustees having some type of visual presentation. We are the supervisors of the superintendent. That is our job. I know of no other job, you think about what you do, where you go to work, you present something to your boss, and your boss cannot counter. That's what we're going to vote on, that the superintendent can put up on the boards what they like, what is necessary also, and we, as the supervisors, cannot challenge that data. It should be challenged. That is our job, the oversight. It goes absolutely, utterly unchallenged if we lose this ability. That's why I advocate for it. That's why other people advocate for it.
Ms. Lamont Dixon had her hand up before me.
Ms. Lamont Dixon?
I have a few things, but first I would like to speak to what Mr. Grabowski just shared. The challenge that I have with the visual presentations, it's not the sharing of the information with the superintendent. I actually agree with you about sharing the information. The only thing I'm concerned about, and I know we just had our board retreat like at the end of your first term and at the end of the school year, but if we want the superintendent to add, because right now, on the superintendent goals, the things that you presented are not actually part exactly in the way you did it. They're not actually part of those. So as a board, we used to have a board superintendent evaluation committee, which we don't have anymore, which is fine, but we can actually, as a board, say we want to see this metric and expect the superintendent to do it and add it as a goal, and then we move in that direction. I don't think we necessarily have to do it as a visual presentation when we could literally just put it on the list of goals and say, this is our expectation. So I just think it's the approach for me. It's not that I'm against visual presentations by any means, it's just the approach. And then, do you want me to finish? Like, I have two other points that I wanted to make, because I wasn't going to say anything about that. But the other thing is, when we vote on this, just to think about, there are two items here that are very different items, but we're voting on this as one item. So I just wanted to, maybe they should be separated, I'm not sure. And then the other one would be refraining from use of cell phones. I understand the sentiment behind that, but I think, every board member here probably has very different concerns or issues. So maybe it's more of a code to say that if you use your cell phone on the dais, that it's for emergency, family, depending on what that is. Maybe speaking to it from those terms, because one, we're volunteers. Two, people have children, people have kids in college that are away. You get text messages about different things. No, I don't think we should be using our cell phones to talk to people and get feedback during a board meeting. I don't think we should do that at all. But I do think that refraining from use of our cell phones, just a blanket statement, is probably just not, I don't see how we can mandate that for the board. And me personally, speaking for myself, it will be very difficult for me to do that. I have 3 kids away in college. Anything can happen in the middle of the night. I'm going to keep my phone, and I don't know what happens if we vote to not have them, because I still will have my phone. So, just wanted to kind of share that. That's it. I'm done, I think.
And if you have the capability to move to divide the motion, if you would prefer to vote on these in 2, correct, Mrs. Spalding?
That is correct.
Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah, first, I just want to correct something. We do have a board and superintendent evaluation committee, except it includes the entire board, which it was voted to make that change because I think the majority thought it was better that everybody be involved. So I just wanted to clarify that. As far as the use of cell phones, refrain, I don't think you have to interpret to say you couldn't use it if a family member or whatever was sending you an important message. I mean, of course, you'd use it. I think Mrs. Parker's intent on that when she first brought this forward was that she didn't want to see people texting back and forth and using it while the meeting was ongoing for, board business. So we could change that word. You could amend the motion to change that, the language there. But as far as the visual presentations, I understand what Mr. Grabowski's saying, what the speaker said, and I agree with that. And Ms. Lamont Dixon sounded like she agreed that you should be able to present information. And again, maybe we need to amend the wording to say that unless it is first discussed with the superintendent as to what a board member might like to show, and that there's some discussion ahead of time, because this is never a gotcha kind of thing. It never should be, working as a team of 8. So I would be okay with something like that where it's, because it says avoid. It doesn't mean you absolutely can't, but it says to avoid it. It means to, stay away, try to stay away from it. But maybe we could change it to address it in that way, and I don't know if that would satisfy Mr. Grabowski's concerns, that in terms of how we can manage that, because I think you don't want to show up and say, oh, Mr. Odom, go ahead and put that slide up, and the administration was given no chance to prepare information. As an example, we should ask questions when we get the agenda of the administration if there's something you don't understand or you'd like more clarity on. And I did that with an item today with Dr. Brown on prisms, and he got the information, so I don't feel a need to discuss it when I was going to bring it up since it was part of the budget, spending the money, but I didn't feel the need to, and then he shared it with the entire board. So that's just information, and people can choose to do what they will with it. But I just think that if we're going to allow a board member to say, hey, I'd like to show some information, that the administration, through the superintendent, knows about it first, and they maybe the board member may not have all the data. Maybe they do, but I just think it should go that way. That's just my 3 cents.
Mr. Sitton?
Madam President, I would move that we table this item because there's been 3 different folks talk about specific wording in here, and that's really not something that I think we're going to come to an agreement on changing verbiage on these 2 items. So I would recommend or make a motion that we table this till next month's board meeting, have an opportunity to get our comments and recommendations to Dr. Brown, let him work on the verbiage, and then get that back out to the board members so that we're all on the same page.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion to place the item on the table and a second. All those well,
There's no discussion.
all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1, correct? All right. Item 7D, board operating procedures, special board meetings. Do I have a motion, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, Madam President. Motion to approve revisions to board operating procedures, section special board meetings as revised and presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Sitton?
Yeah, I keep rereading this, and it's very wordy. So the original was, in the event of a request by any board member to hold a special meeting, the superintendent shall poll all board members to determine whether a quorum of the board members is willing and able to attend the special meeting. And then in the change, the board president shall call special meetings at the board president's discretion or on the request by 2 members of the board. Then it goes further and says, in the event of a request by any board member to hold a special meeting, the superintendent or designee shall poll all board members to determine whether a quorum of the board members is willing and able to attend the special meeting. Sounds to me it's identically the same, just a couple extra sentences and more verbiage. What am I missing?
Mr. Sitton, the old language said that the superintendent would poll the board. The new language says or designee.
The superintendent or designee. And I read that as the superintendent's designee. So, again, it's really the same thing. The superintendent or their designee, maybe a member of the cabinet or deputy sup or whoever, is going to be polling the board to see who's there. So what are we really changing?
Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah, I just know because it helped to put that together. It's, first of all, to align it to what the BED local says. And what you're doing is you're saying in the event, and you had asked Mr. Sitton about, well, how did we poll, because that wasn't included in there. So in the event that a board member or 2 board members go to the president, then the superintendent designee shall poll board members to determine whether a quorum of board members is willing and able to attend a special meeting. And so that, this again would put it in line to what, I believe it's Council BED local, or BE local?
BED local.
BED local, right. So that our procedure matches our policy.
Mr. Sitton, can I jump in? I'm
Yes,
sorry. I
go
think
ahead.
you raise a great point. I think it's wordy and it's my wordiness. I wrote it that way, and I think you make a great point. Would it be better, do you think, if it read, the board president shall call special meetings at the board president's discretion or on the request by 2 members of the board? In such an event, comma, the superintendent or designee shall poll all board members. Would that shorten it to you? I'm trying to figure out where your concern is, but in trying to figure that out, I see a concern in what I wrote.
Yeah, so, I mean, really, I actually like it. I like the sentence before that, because in the original policy, a request of any board member. Now we're saying a request by 2 members of the board. But in the event, in the event that the board president or any 2 board members want to hold a special board meeting, it's still, the superintendent's going to have to poll the board to see if there's a quorum that's willing and able. And that was the verbiage I wanted in there, because it would help prevent any Open Meetings Act violations by an individual board member reaching out to 3 other members to see if they're available to show up.
Agreed.
So I was just, as I was rereading it again just now, that's really the only change. The only change is that it requires 2 board members, other than the board president, to request a meeting. And in any event, the superintendent still has to poll the board to see if a quorum can be here and is willing to be here. Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading it correctly, although I do think it is worded by me in a way that is confusing.
Okay.
And so I can see your confusion and would recommend the change that I mentioned, that it would say, in such event, the superintendent or designee shall poll all board members.
The chair recognizes Mr. Scarfo.
Since I've worked on that with you, but not, just to be clear, the board president can call, and the way it's read there and the way it's written in the policy, the board president can call a special meeting.
That's right, and he said that.
Right, I'm just saying, to make it clear, they don't have to get, the board chair may ask the superintendent to go ahead and ask everybody, but they may say, these are the dates, we need to have a special meeting, there's a burning reason to do it, and the board chair, the board president can do that. The other really talks about if two board members or more were to come to the board president and ask to have a meeting, then you'd have to make sure that there is the quorum and people are willing to be there. But the board president can call the special meeting, and that's clear in the policy. Not so much, the procedure now is mirroring the policy.
Correct.
So if we got a problem with the policy, that's another issue.
Mrs. Lamont Dixon?
So maybe I'm reading this wrong, but to me, this says that the board president or two board members can call a special meeting.
You're exactly right.
Okay. So
I think that's what they're both saying.
Well, okay, but it says at the board president's
Scarfo?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Sitton?
Yeah, so the board president or two board members, it does say that, or, not and or. And in the event of a request, then the superintendent has to poll the board to see if there's a quorum willing and able to be here. Now, there is, later on, it talks about emergency meetings, and that could be anything from something what specifically says urgent public necessity defined by law that warrants a meeting and things of that nature. We all have to get a 72-hour notice. So that's a specific purpose meeting in an emergency type situation. That's a little different, but it's here in writing, which we didn't have before. But the first paragraph, which talks about who can call a special meeting, it specifically says, in the event of a request, a special meeting, superintendent or designee shall poll all board members to determine whether a quorum of the board members is willing and able to attend the special meeting.
Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah, I'm just going to say it again, that the board president shall call special meetings at the board president's discretion or on request by two members of the board. And when it's the latter case, then the superintendent or designee will poll the board. But it also and talking about emergency meetings are only required by law 24 hours notice, and so it's not a question of polling anybody. If there is determined to be by the board president or two members that there's an emergency or urgent public necessity as defined by law, and this is, again, it's the board policy. This is to get the procedure in line with the board policy. Members of the board shall be given notice of special meetings at least 72 hours prior to the scheduled time of the meeting and at least 1 hour prior to the time of an emergency meeting. So I think it's pretty clear about what we're doing, because I think, again, if people are having a problem with this, then we got a problem with BE local, and that needs to be changed.
The chair recognizes, are you finished, Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah, I'm finished.
The chair recognizes Mr. Grabowski.
Madam President, I move to table this agenda item until next meeting in July so we can rewrite it and it can be clear and we can see it ahead of time to question.
Second.
The motion has been placed on the table, and I do have a second. All those in favor of placing the item on the table? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Okay, item, let's see, are we on E? Okay, so E was just tabled? Okay, so item 7E, revision to BED local. Do I have a motion, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, Madam President, motion to approve revisions to BED local as presented.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Item carries 7-0. Next is our information items. Item 8A, Intruder Detection Audit Report. Mr. Perkins.
No report tonight.
No report. Item 8B, let's see, so there was no report. So item 8B, revisions, TASB update 123, and administrative recommendations. Any questions from the board regarding this item? Item 8C, 2024-2025 federal, state, and federal programs report. Any questions from the board on this item? Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Dr. Brown, I asked you about this ahead of time because, again, didn't want to surprise anything. But can you just, looking at page 1 of the write-up where it talks about identified needs and goals, and then it has a listing of the special allotment programs, and it talks about the state allotment, and it has a percentage in parentheses, and that says that's the percent required to be spent on direct program expenses. So, for instance, special education, the adjusted allotment is $47.4 million, and it has 55% in there. So I just wanted to get an understanding, for that, for the compensatory education allotment, where's the other one? The career and technology allotment. So where's the 45%, the rest of the money? How is that divvied up? I just wanted to have a sense of that, and for the public as well.
And so I think Mr. Beatty's going to help address that for us.
So that's a good question, and I think the answer to your question is that these are a portion of the allotments. So that first section that you're referring to, that's the state allotment that we get per these specific areas. So special ed, state comp ed, bilingual, all those different things. That percentage that you see, these allotments, we must spend certain portions of them on directly related services for those areas, or we risk losing that allotment. We have to give that back. 55%, we have to spend 55% of our state special ed allotment, the $47 million. But in that case, we spend 150% of that allotment. So that is nowhere near sufficient to provide special education services. So you'll see later in the report the federal funds that we receive also, but across the board, all funding related to special education, we spend about $81 million. So of that $515 million that was approved tonight, we're pulling from every bucket we can to provide the needs of our students. At CCMR, we spend 500% of that allotment. So it's far, it's nowhere near the appropriate amount to be able to provide those services. But those are just the requirements that the state makes sure that you spend, or you risk losing those state funds. And that's just a portion of the allotments that are available.
Well, thank you. And I think that might be good information to somehow notate that we're not paying anything near, or we're paying so much more than that, so that somebody that question doesn't pop, like, okay, what are you doing with the rest of it? Because that's, like you say, and it's only a part.
Dyslexia, 100%.
I just want people to know, that's all.
Yeah, dyslexia, that's one too, that 300% we spend on that, of the allotment.
Thank you.
I just want you to know, I wanted to answer that question, but I think that scared Mr. Beatty. So he said, let me have that. Thank you, Mr. Beatty. You did great.
Any further questions on that item? Okay, item 8D, updates from our board associations and committees. Does anybody have an update? Mr. Sitton.
You all should have gotten the minutes and also the presentation on bus transportation around the district. If you have any questions on that, you can reach out to Mr. Sabert and the Transportation Department. But I think that it pretty much spells out some of the options that they're looking at. So if you have any questions on that. Also, there's been, everybody's gotten the emails. There's been a lot of questions about the South Ag Barn. And just a little bit of a history lesson on that. When we went to the architects on the North Ag Barn, and they put that together, brought the presentation. The one common question, or the one common comment that we were getting from the teachers on the south side is that the pens were too small. And from a budgetary standpoint, We really, and from a space standpoint, we couldn't make them any bigger. And the teachers on the south did not want to lose their space. So they were well aware that we were not going to be able to rebuild their pens, their animal pens, to match the ones on the north without reducing the size. And that was something they just didn't want to give up. As long as they were getting the same exact show arena, same exact office space, same exact restrooms, they could handle an older barn as long as they got to keep the bigger pens. The other thing that we talked about in our building and planning meeting is just the aesthetics, keeping things mowed. We went through the same thing years ago when we bought the Sconzo property. Prior to building that facility, one thing that we did is go in and start clearing all the underbrush to give it more curb appeal and make it more safer for students, et cetera. And I know it was mentioned already tonight that that area has been cleaned up and it's now on a rotation going forward as well. So just wanted to give everybody a little background on that piece.
Any further reports?
I just want to question, Mr. Sidden.
Mr. Scarfo, you were recognized.
Yeah, you were looking, I'm sorry. Yeah, is the transportation presentation, that's available? Is it in this, it's not in this agenda. I was just thinking, because I think that was, as we talked about it at Building and Planning, that was really good information that maybe the public can see and understand what's going on.
Mr. Sitton?
Yeah, I think the consensus of the administration, it's still a work in progress.
Okay.
They wanted all the board members to see the impact of the different options that they're looking at. And then once they've narrowed it down to a couple options, then bringing that back to the board to say, here's the work we've done. This is where we started. This is where we landed, and then we go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Then we can make that public. Is that right? Yep.
Any further reports? Okay. Item 8E, Financial Services Report. Any questions from the board regarding this item? Okay. Item 9A, moving to our closing items. Are there any topics for future board business? Ms. Lamont Dixon?
Yes. I wanted to see if we could add an item to our closed session agenda for July, and that would be to get a report on IT to apprise the board in closed session of our status with Schoology and Power School. I know Mr. Ford has come here many times to share, but I also know the background. When I first was elected to the board, we also had a technology committee that I sat on. And I know Ms. Conrad was the person, the board member that actually brought Schoology to us, and it was the new hot thing at the time. And then we were in a very good place. I know none of us here want a breach in security at all. And the only challenge I see is, unfortunately, Mr. Ford, we would not be discussing breaches in public. But I would like to, if the board is open to that idea, for us to do that. And from that, if we deem necessary from discussing it in closed session, if needed, we may need to bring back a technology committee.
There can be no discussion on this item. Anybody who is in favor of discussing that in closed in July? 7-0.
Thank you.
Mr. Grabowski?
I have two. At our regular board meetings, we always have the rightful dignity to say the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the Texas flag. But we don't do it at our special board meetings, and I would like to see if the board would like to consider adding the pledge and the salute to our special board meetings as well as the regular board meeting.
All those in favor of adding that to an agenda item?
We're not voting.
Yeah, we're just, yeah. So we're not
That's how you
voting. We're adding to an agenda item for future board business. What's your second one, Mr. Grabowski?
I came with a stick, but I'm not going to be able to use it, of course. On here is 4 pictures, 8 pictures, 4 of them side by side, that show the stark difference between the north and the south ag barns. This could go right back there to Mr. Odom on these screens. Maybe give me a limit or other trustees limit, 4 slides, 3 minutes, whatever we hopefully someday decide. It's a very powerful tool allowing a trustee to have electronic communication. Because all you are wondering, well, what is the south, what is the north, if you have not visited them? You would see the difference immediately where my wife and I went out on the tour. My wife took hundreds of pictures, and we narrowed it down to 8.
Well,
I would like to have at the next meeting to consider polling, to seriously discuss totally modifying the south ag barn to bring it up to the standards of the north barn.
Okay, polling of the board. All those in favor of placing on the agenda updates to the South Ag Barn?
Yes, ma'am.
Discussion. No discussion. It's a poll.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, we can't discuss it. That's why.
Well,
I'd already brought this up. That's why I'd already brought this up. We can't talk about it, but we can't talk about it.
okay, so I didn't see how many hands went up, though. So, okay, so it will be discussed in Mr. Sitton's Building and Planning Committee. So with that, Mr. Sitton, I'm sorry.
I've got two things as well. So we met last month, and we put the superintendent on leave, on paid leave, with no explanation, no plan going forward, and it was a 4-3 vote. I would like a special board meeting as soon as possible to bring Dr. Fagan back into her full capacity.
Poll the board. Who's in favor of that? Okay.
All right, and then number 2, I assume that failed. I didn't look around.
Failed.
So then number 2, historically, we do our committee assignments at the June meeting. We didn't do it last year because the committee that puts that together is the past president, the current president, and the incoming president, and we didn't know who the incoming president was going to be last year. So that's why we did that. But every other year for the last 20 years, it's been at the June board meeting. And the way a policy reads, our policy reads is that vote is taken after the board officers are reset, which is why it's generally the agenda item right after the officers meet. That way, the new committees and the cabinet can get to work sooner rather than later. So for our next board meeting, I hope, I guess for this purpose, I'd like to see our committee assignments on the next board meeting.
Poll the board. Anyone to my left over here? Anyone over here? Okay, with that, the time is now 9:22. This meeting is adjourned.